The local unhoused community in Las Vegas is dealing with a huge loss.
Social media influencer Shirley Raines, founder of Beauty to the Streets, has died. TMZ reports that Raines, also known as Miss Shirley, was found dead in her Henderson home yesterday. Fox 5.
She built her life around saving others. Every week she stood on street corners handing out food to the homeless. She went live on social media, smiling, encouraging, rallying a community to give back. Thousands knew her face. Hundreds called her a hero. But in the final 6 weeks of her life, something shifted. Family members noticed changes, fatigue that wouldn't lift, events suddenly canceled, a voice that didn't sound like hers anymore. Some say she seemed confused. Others claim she mentioned feeling unsafe. Online, her followers started asking questions she never answered. Then one day, she stopped responding altogether. When authorities finally entered her home, they found a scene that didn't match the woman the world thought they knew. No struggle, no explanation, just silence where there used to be so much noise. Her name was Ms. Shirley, and while the internet exploded with theories, the people who loved her were left with something far heavier than speculation. They were left with grief and questions that may never be answered. This is her story, not the rumor, not the headline. The truth. You're watching the exposed crime. We tell the stories that need to be told. Domestic violence, toxic relationships, and the lives lost behind closed doors. No sugarcoating, no excuses, just the truth. If you're new here, subscribe and join us as we shed light on stories the world tries to forget. The call came in on a Tuesday afternoon. A family member, frantic, voice shaking, told dispatch she hadn't heard from Ms. Shirley in days. No texts, no calls, nothing. And for a woman who lived online, who broadcasted her life to thousands, silence like that wasn't normal. Officers arrived at her home just after 3 p.m. The street was quiet. Her car was in the driveway. The lights inside were off. They knocked, no answer. They knocked again, still nothing. Permission was granted to enter. What they found inside wasn't violent. It wasn't chaotic. It was something worse. It was still. A half-finished cup of coffee sat on the kitchen counter. Her phone rested on the arm of the couch, screen dark. Mail stacked neatly by the door. Everything looked like she just stepped out for a moment. But she hadn't. Miss Shirley was found unresponsive in her bedroom. No signs of forced entry, no weapon, no note. Just a woman who had spent her entire adult life taking care of others, now lying alone in a room that should have felt safe. The coroner was called, the scene was processed, and by nightfall the news had begun to spread. At first it was just whispers, then posts, then screenshots of her last live stream, analyzed frame by strangers who swore something was off. The theories came fast, too fast, faster than the facts ever could. But here's what we know for sure. Miss Shirley was 52 years old. She ran a nonprofit that fed hundreds of people every month. She had no known enemies. She was loved, respected, and admired by her community. And yet in the span of 6 weeks, something unraveled. Why did a woman so visible suddenly go silent? Why did the people closest to her say she wasn't herself? And how does someone who dedicated her life to helping others end up alone, with no one to help her? The answers aren't simple, and some of them we may never know. But we owe it to her to try. If you scrolled through Miss Shirley's social media even once, you knew exactly who she was. Or at least you thought you did. She was the woman handing out sandwiches under the highway overpass every Saturday morning. The one who went live from her car, talking about faith, resilience, and the power of showing up. She didn't just preach kindness, she lived it, publicly, consistently, and without asking for credit. Her nonprofit started small. Just her, a folding table, and a few grocery bags. But within 2 years it had grown into something much bigger. Volunteers, donors, local news features. She became the face of grassroots charity in her city. People loved her because she didn't perform compassion, she embodied it. But off camera, the story was different. Friends say she rarely talked about herself. She deflected compliments. She carried the weight of every person she couldn't help like it was her personal failure. And while the world saw a woman full of light, those closest to her saw someone burning out in real time. She had lost her mother years earlier, a loss that shaped everything. That grief became her fuel. She poured it into the streets, into strangers, into a mission that never slept. And because she smiled through it all, no one thought to ask if she was okay. She became a symbol, and symbols aren't allowed to be tired. The awards kept coming, the recognition grew, but so did the pressure. Donors expected results. Volunteers needed leadership. Beneficiaries depended on her. And somewhere in the middle of all that giving, she stopped taking care of herself. Her finances were stretched. The nonprofit ran on fumes and faith. She worked a full-time job just to keep it afloat, then spent nights packing meals and organizing outreach events. Sleep was optional. Rest was selfish. She told people she was fine. She posted about blessings and breakthroughs. She kept going because stopping felt like letting everyone down. And in the last 6 weeks of her life, that toll became impossible to hide. The cracks started to show, small at first, then undeniable. And the people who loved her most are left asking the same haunting question. Something changed in late autumn. Family members noticed it first. Miss Shirley, who was always on time, started missing dinners. She canceled a community event she'd been planning for months. No explanation, just a vague text about not feeling well. Her voice on the phone sounded distant, distracted. One cousin later said, "It was like talking to a shell of her." But then there are the allegations, the whispers that spread after her death, the claims made by people who say they saw warning signs no one else did. Some say she seemed confused during her last live stream, that she repeated herself, that her eyes looked tired in a way that went beyond exhaustion. Others claim she mentioned feeling unsafe, though no one can confirm to whom or in what context. There were rumors of unexplained bruises, of her asking strange questions about memory loss, of phone calls where she didn't sound like herself. What we do know is this: her social media activity slowed. Posts that used to come daily became sporadic. Comments went unanswered. Her followers started asking, "Are you okay?" in the replies. She never responded. Her last post was a Bible verse. No caption, no context, just words about peace and rest. 3 days later, she went silent. No live streams, no check-ins, nothing. Her phone records show she made a few calls that week, but investigators haven't said to whom. Her last known outing was to a grocery store, where security footage shows her moving slowly, buying just a few items, leaving without speaking to anyone. She looked small, alone. And then nothing. For 6 days, no one heard from her, and when they finally did, it wasn't her voice. It was the officer on the scene, confirming what everyone feared. Was it exhaustion, depression, something darker? The internet has theories, dozens of them, but theories aren't truth, and speculation doesn't honor the dead. What we know is that a woman who gave everything to her community somehow slipped through the cracks of the very support system she built. And that's the tragedy no conspiracy can explain. The news broke online before the family even had time to process it. Screenshots of the police report, blurry photos of her street, strangers posting tributes, theories, accusations, all within hours of her death being confirmed. The investigation moved quickly but quietly. Authorities released only the basics: no signs of forced entry, no obvious trauma, cause of death pending autopsy results. That silence created a vacuum, and the internet filled it fast. One blog claimed she was poisoned. Another said she'd been threatened weeks earlier. A viral TikTok video analyzed her last live stream, pointing out micro-expressions that supposedly proved she was in danger. None of it was verified, but all of it spread like wildfire. Mainstream outlets covered the story too, but with caution. They focused on her charity work, her community impact, the sadness of her sudden loss, but even they couldn't resist the mystery. Beloved nonprofit founder found dead, questions remain. The autopsy took weeks. When the results finally came, they didn't provide closure, they deepened the questions. No drugs, no signs of violence. Natural causes listed, but with a footnote about the complexity of stress-related illness. Her family released a statement asking for privacy. They said she had been struggling, that she carried burdens she never voiced, and that they wished people would remember her for her kindness, not the rumors. But kindness doesn't trend, mystery does. And so the theories kept coming. Some said the nonprofit had financial problems she was hiding. Others speculated about relationships no one knew about. A few even suggested foul play, despite zero evidence. The truth is, we may never know exactly what happened in those final weeks. Not because there's a cover-up, but because some pain is private. Some struggles don't leave evidence behind. What remains undeniable is this: Ms. Shirley was human. She wasn't invincible. She wasn't a martyr. She was a woman who gave more than she had, who carried more than anyone knew, and who, like so many caregivers, believed asking for help meant admitting failure. And that belief may have cost her everything. The people who followed her are left with questions. And the world she served is left a little dimmer. The nonprofit didn't close after she died. Her volunteers showed up the next Saturday, just like always. They set up the folding tables, packed the meals, handed out food to the same corners she used to visit. Because that's what she would have wanted. In the weeks that followed, donations poured in. Not from strangers chasing a story, but from people whose lives she had touched. A man she fed for 2 years. A woman she prayed with during her hardest season. A teenager she mentored who said, "She made me believe I mattered." Her family started a memorial fund. They framed photos of her smiling on outreach days. They shared voice notes she'd sent, full of laughter and hope, reminders of who she was when the cameras were off. Not the mystery, not the theories, not the headlines that will fade in a month. Her legacy is the meals that still get served, the people who still show up, the compassion she planted in a community that refuses to let it die with her. But the questions remain. Why didn't anyone intervene sooner? Why does it take a tragedy for people to ask if someone's okay? And how many others are out there right now, smiling in public, suffering in private, waiting for someone to notice? But who was helping her? The answer is painful: not enough people, not in time. Her story isn't just about what happened in her final weeks. It's about what we miss when we only see the highlight reel. It's about the danger of putting people on pedestals and forgetting they're human. It's about the cost of caregiving when no one's caring for the caregiver. And it's a reminder that strength isn't the same as invincibility. She was strong, she was kind, she was tired. And she deserved better. In a world where she gave light to strangers, the shadows around her own final days remain, not louder than her kindness, but impossible to ignore. Her name was Ms. Shirley, and she mattered. If this story reached you, if it stirred something in your chest, don't let it fade when the video ends. These cases remind us that danger can hide in the everyday, that silence can cost lives, and that sometimes the smallest voice can be the one that saves someone. If you know anybody in a violent or unsafe situation, don't wait. Say something. Call for help. Speak up. Your voice might be the one thing standing between someone and a tragedy like this. Drop a comment. Share this video. Keep their names alive, and we'll be back with another story that needs to be told. This is The Exposed Crime. Stay safe out there.